So if you've ever wanted to leave your mark in the sport of motorcycling, this is where you want to land. This is the AMA Hall of Fame gallery. This is where all the big shots are. The first one I looked at when I walked into this room was Dave Coombs, and you got to think about the High Point National. That was his race, and he was the promoter of his time. My first memory of Dave Coombs was in 1995, going to the High Point National as an amateur. I had never seen tracks prepped that well before. He had this huge disc that would get out there, and the riders absolutely loved it. So coming off the High Point National, it made too much sense to not feature Dave Coombs. And think about Rita Coombs was just inducted into the AMA Hall of Fame in 2023 as well. Now moving on, at the High Point National, I saw Roger DeCoster, and he was the man. You don't get the nickname the man without changing what the expectations are in professional motocross. You think about all the titles he's won. You think about the success he's had since his racing days, being a part of Team Honda, being a part of Ricky Carmichael's effort at Factory Suzuki, and now all the success he's had at KTM Red Bull Factory Racing. Now, Johnny O'Mara, a hero in racing in his own right, a member of so many winning Motocross of Nations teams, and you think about the success he's having with Jet and Hunter Lawrence. Although it's going to be on Team Australia one of these years at Motocross of Nations, they're going to get that job done, and I'm going to give Johnny a hard time about that. But you see the just career development, and he just continues to help other riders win now. Now, speaking of helping riders win, Mitch Payton got his 300th win at the High Point National this past weekend. You think about Brian Swink back in 1991 getting that first win all the way to Ty Masterpool. No one had that on their bingo card, by the way, Ty Masterpool getting that 300th win. But it happened at High Point, and for Mitch Payton, you could see the emotion pouring out of him getting that win, thinking about all the years, all the success, and all the difficulties you have along the way to accomplish something like that. He just lost his father. You know, we're filming the week of Father's Day weekend here, so that was a big win for Mitch Payton. I think everybody was excited to see it, and he is such a deserving member to be in this Hall of Fame. More legends, and this one has a special place in my heart. RJ, Rick Johnson, my childhood hero. Now, for those of you who have VHS tapes, go back to 1990, the Atlanta Supercross, and about halfway through, RJ moves into the lead, and you're going to see a child, a 10-year-old Jason Thomas, jumping up and down on the side of the racetrack because I was losing my mind that my hero had moved into the lead. Now, on last week's SMX Insider Show, we got a chance to ask RJ what it meant for him to be inducted into the AMA Hall of Fame.
Well, I became an AMA member when I was actually 15 because I had to get registered to go get my pro license. And all the history from On Any Sunday, watching Mert Lawwell, the motocross days, and then going to races and watching Brock Glover, Bob Hanna, and all of that, being part of the AMA Hall of Fame meant that, not that you've arrived or departed or whatever, but it was you were recognized by, I feel, the place to be recognized. And so to be part of that prestigious group just means the world to me, and it's something that I have displayed in my house and that I'll remember for the rest of my life.
Now, on our side of the sport, we always think of the AMA as the rules makers at the Super Motocross races, but a larger part of what the AMA does, and they've been doing it for 100 years, they're celebrating that now, is protecting your right to ride. Now, a lot of that involves street legal motorcycles. Hall of Famers include Ben Nighthorse Campbell, a former U.S. Senator who was an avid motorcyclist and fought insurance company discrimination against motorcycle-related crashes, fought for motorcycles being able to ride in the high occupancy vehicle lanes in a variety of states, and a lot of the people who are behind those efforts are also in the Hall of Fame. On our end of it, for dirt bikes, you might remember the lead law that popped up about 15 years ago, where the government wanted to ban any product designed for kids that had lead in it, which would have included motorcycles. I don't think kids are eating motorcycles or ingesting lead, so the AMA fought really hard to make sure motorcycles were not a part of that. So protecting your right to ride, a big part of what the AMA does, a big part of the Hall of Fame. And now it's our time to get in the room we're probably most familiar with, the motocross section. Especially you, JT, although you surprised me, you said I've ridden a lot of these bikes. You have?
Well, I don't know who's watching, and I don't want anybody to be liable, but yes, I mean, it's a pretty common practice. Riders off the record will try other motorcycles, and that's the only way to find out if your motorcycle's on par or where it can be better at times. So yes, I remember Ricky Carmichael complaining about that 2001 factory Kawasaki 250 because he had already signed his contract to go to Honda the following year, right? That's pretty normal. Everybody's looking ahead. Think about James Stewart's factory Kawasaki 450. Well, Tim Ferry was teammates with him at the time. Timmy happened to be my best friend.
Oh.
I happened to be able to spend some time on that motorcycle.
Oh, okay.
great bike that was that year. So for me, walking through here is like a walk through memory lane because this was my era. The Ricky Carmichaels, the James Stewarts, Ryan Villapoto, kind of the end of it. But yeah, I can't walk through here without cavalcade of memories coming back.
Yeah, even specifically the tires. Villapoto started using this Dunlop tire that was pretty rare, and that's still on his bike over there, and then you all started fighting to try to get that.
Yeah, so it was a 762, which Dunlop didn't really sell. They didn't market it. They actually hated that we used it because it wasn't really in their lineup, but the performance of it was so much better. And you were kind of asking why didn't they ever sell it. I think it was because the wear was a little bit higher than what they're really looking for. But for performance, everybody got them, and I was kind of on the lower tier, right? I wasn't on, let's say, Dunlop's most highest priority list, right? But I would get Chad Reed's takeoff. So much like me jumping on these other riders' motorcycles, I would carry his takeoffs from practice during the week on the airplane with me, put them on my motorcycle on the weekend, and then I would deal with the wrath of Brock Glover telling me that I'm not supposed to have that tire on the weekends.
You would race with Chad's old practice tires.
I was, yes, and he would be like, well, you know, all the other privateers you're racing against, they don't have access to that, and they're mad at me about it, and I'm like, well, that sucks to be you because I'm using the tire anyway.
Other great stories, this is personal for us too because we work alongside Ricky Carmichael and James Stewart in the booth now. It's pretty wild to think that Stu was inducted only in 2022, and I believe that was one of the first public appearances he had post-racing, and to think just 2 years later, now we're with him every weekend on live TV, so that's pretty neat. And we have a history, of course, working with Jeff Emig as well, and a really neat little Emig section, who is a Hall of Famer. His first championship bike, the 1991-1992 YZ125, was known as unbelievably slow. And the work that Yamaha had to do, he eventually won the 92-125 national title. I was wondering what the plaque would say. It does say known as a underpowered motorcycle in production form. And then JT, were you there? That was an amazing performance. Emig came from being fired by Kawasaki to winning the US Open.
Yeah, I actually raced the 4-stroke class, which is just racing as we know it today. But I remember watching Jeff Emig that day in practice. He had just had a unceremonious departure from factory Kawasaki, shows up there, and he was on fire in practice, right?
Yeah.
So I went down and did what anybody should do. I bet $100 on Jeff Emig at 10-1
you
to
did
win
this?
that weekend. So thank you, Jeff Emig. You made me $1,000, which I probably lost at the blackjack table anyway. But these are the memories we make, and yeah, it's awesome to be here. There's so much history here, and yeah, as you said, this is the stuff we're most familiar with.
Absolutely. Now, we're SMX Insider. We can show you a few things that are not officially part of the Hall of Fame for guests. James Holder from the AMA showed us some files in the back that you'll only get to see on this show.
So one of the really cool things about the Hall of Fame, this affiliation with the AMA, is you have a lot of AMA history over here. And a big piece of that are these rider history files. So when racers would get their pro license, they would have to submit things in their handwriting, their documentation for what justified their professional license, and that's all collected here going back to really the beginning. So if you just look in here, M's through S's, you have names like Scott Russell, Richard Plum, Stefan Roncada, Matt Mladen. There's just so much history in here, from their original licenses to if they were ever sanctioned or fined. And it's just an enormous amount of motorcycling heritage right here.
The neat thing about the Hall of Fame, it is not just great racers like Brock Glover who are part of it. It also includes people that did things like I do. Dave Despain, an iconic announcer, also writer, public relations person, worked for the AMA for a spell. When I was growing up watching the races on TV, Despain and Larry Myers were the announcing team in 1990, 1992, 1993. They were a great duo together. Larry Myers, also iconic as an announcer in Motocross and Supercross. He's in, his plaque's over there, as is Supermouth Larry Huffman, who's in as well. So the announcers and the people behind the scenes get their place. The Clayton family that started Cycle News, also in the Motorcycle Hall of Fame. So a lot of room for a lot of different people who have contributed to motorcycling. If you want to watch our next race at Southwick, there's a weekend off. This will be June 29th. Race day live coverage presented by Motorsport.com is at 10 a.m. Eastern, and the motos start at 1 o'clock. That's on Peacock and the SMX Video Pass. So enjoy your weekend off. Maybe stop by the museum.
Hi folks, Lee Diffie from NBC Sports here. If you truly enjoyed what you just watched, you can get more news, interviews, and highlights by subscribing to the Motorsports on NBC YouTube page. You can get it all, so go for it.